One of the best things about hosting a sports card podcast, other than the millions of dollars it earns me annually, is getting to meet new people. I got to talking over DMs with today's guest, Pat, several months ago, and it was clear this is a guy who really enjoys sports cards. So I figured, hey, let's turn on the microphone and see what happens. On Instagram, Pat is Insta Account Haver. And we get into all sorts of stuff in this episode. From whether the good old days were really the good old days, to what types of vintage collections really grab our attention, to what it's like having to relearn the hobby after being away for decades. This is The Shallow End. I'm Dave Schwartz. Thanks for listening to an episode that is zero drama and, in the end, is just a couple of guys talking about sports cards. Welcome into The Shallow End. His name is Pat on Instagram. He is Insta Account Haver. Pat, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's really nice to meet you, Dave. This is really fantastic. I love the show, big fan, and I'm just really happy to be part of your little project that you're doing. This is going to be really cool.
I've been excited to have you on for a while. We've been chatting off and on for several months now, over Instagram, and just to finally be able to put a face with the name, it's great. And I look forward to the conversation.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing how there's a great deal of I wouldn't say like anonymity, but there's like this sort of obscured element of the people that you see on Instagram or you hear on podcasts, and you kind of imagine what they look like, because we don't put our faces on our avatars whatsoever. We usually use like a card image, or I use Mark Verlaine's picture on the cover of Marquee Moon, the television album, because I'm a big hipster and I love television. And but it's just so amazing to actually come into contact with folks and see what they look like, and see like it provides that sense of immediacy. But the thing that's really interesting about this conversation, and I hope this doesn't turn people off, Dave and I are both academics, and the thing that I fear is that what academics do, like kind of our stock and trade, and I don't know if you agree with this, we either take things that are really dull and we try and find the really interesting aspects of them, right? The things that are just mind-blowing. Or in my case, and what I do is I take things that are really exciting, and then I go and I make them really dull, and then I try and make them exciting again, but in a different way. And one of the things that I fear, because we're academics, is that because we have these sort of different standards of what's like exciting and fun and interesting, that we just veer off into being insufferable and navel gazing and stuff. So I hope that we don't veer into that direction.
Hopefully not. We do tend to dwell.
We dwell. Yeah.
we dwell. And I had someone to say to me once, one of my advisors say, and it's a cliche, I'm not the only one who said it, the arguments are so intense because the stakes are so low.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. We deconstruct, we wrestle with, and it's the least compelling.
We unpack.
Yeah. But it's like the most, but the unpacking is about as fun as unpacking stuff. Sometimes unpacking stuff from a move, right? Or the wrestling match is like, this isn't like a 5-star classic. This is like, just a lot of pushing and a lot of,
So maybe for those who don't know you or are not that familiar with you, just introduce yourself a little bit. Give us who you are, your collecting background.
So I got back into so this isn't going to be anything particularly novel. I got back into the hobby after a very long hiatus. I started a little bit later than a lot of our peers. I started in 2023, so I missed the whole like base PSA 10 boom. Like I'm kind of happy because I'd probably be sitting on like a massive stack of PSA 10 base Tyler Hero cards or something. But I got back into it because I was feeling a little bit of a, let's just say kind of a clinical funk, like a little bit of an existential crisis. And I kind of was trying to find something that I really enjoyed, and there I don't want to say pure, but something that was like something that I enjoyed from the past, and I kind of stumbled on going back into collecting sports cards. When I was a kid, I was the biggest sports card nut. I was obsessed with it. My dad, I remember the first pack of sports cards I got. I was like 4 years old. It was 1987 Topps football. And I think I could remember every card that was in that pack. There was a Jim Kelly, there was a Charlie Brown, there was a Jim Kelly, Jerry Rice. There was a few other ones. There was like a random safety from the Buccaneers that I could see the card in my mind. Like he had a beard and like, curly brown hair. His first name was Curtis. I can't remember his last name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I remember those cards. It was like this amazing moment. And my dad and I would collect cards together because but it was a little bonding experience with us. It was very much a bonding experience because my father was away a lot on trips for work. And it was just something that we could really do together, that sort of thing to connect with each other. And I think at the back of my mind, my dad had that sort of junk wax dream of being able to make riches off of 1989 Topps and Pro Set and all those other products. I think he had in his mind, or at least he tried to convince my mom that like in the future, I would go into the university bursar's office and pay my tuition with like 3 complete sets of 1991 Topps baseball, all 792 cards. Here's 3 of them. Boom, tuition's paid for. But we kind of, I kind of got out of it when I was 14. I shifted to collecting record albums, but during that time, I really liked collecting. I shifted towards the end of it to collecting vintage. And when you're a kid and you have limited budget and you don't have eBay, vintage takes on so many, like you see this incredible value in just the random players, of people that aren't the marquee names, and you learn about the statistics and you learn about all these different players, whether it was the Alou brothers or Louis Tiant, or just the endless names of folks that were stars in their time. And I got out of it, and then I remember, on my birthday, it was my birthday, I went to a local store and I bought a few blaster boxes of Prism basketball, and I opened them up, and I was just blown away because cards were so different. Like I had no idea that they were shiny, and like every card seemed like it was just special because you had different patterns and whatnot. But yeah, I was a big nut when I was a kid. I remember there was this VHS tape I always used to watch that I'd gotten for Christmas called Baseball Card Collector, and I watched that thing ritually, like multiple times a week. And have you ever seen this VHS tape? So it's amazing. So it was produced, I think, in like 1989, because everything that was visual ended in 1989 Topps, and it was narrated by Mel Allen, and it had so much royalty-free music in it. Like the music that they would have for like the local community bulletin on the TV.
Oh yeah.
And they went through like the history of cards, from baseball cards, from Old Judge Tobacco all the way into the T sets, all the way into Gowdy, through the Monopoly years, showed Bowman. Like it basically visually gave a reference to all these cards that existed, which I thought was the sickest thing. It was so cool to see them come across. And then they introduced a few of the luminaries kind of early in the hobby, like Larry Fritsch and Mike Ehrenstein, the guy that organized the first card show, or at least lore says. But the funny thing about it is, and I actually watched it in a little bit of a YouTube dig, and it was just so funny because there was this optimism that existed amongst the dealers. And the dealers were all these guys with like sleeveless shirts. It smelled like, you could tell they smelled like Doral lights, and they were talking about, I remember there's one guy that was holding a 52 Mantle. I don't know if it was real or not, in one of those super thick bulletproof screw down cases that could withstand like shotgun blasts. And he was holding next to him a Mattingly 84 Donruss. and he and he was like talking about it. He's like, yeah, we like to advise the kids to get into the new cards because eventually they will grow, they will reach that $8,000 to $10,000 value like this over here. And there was just such a naivety to it. And then when you look back at it now, it just like blows your mind that we understand things like junk wax, and we talk about these sets as if they were just these absolute also rans that people talk about burning them in their backyard, and how much that Don Mattingly Donruss was, where it was like, it's still probably, I don't know, $30, $20. I have no idea. But the idea that people looked at this and saw it as potentially equivalent to a 1952 Topps Mantle, it's just like, it kind of really puts things into perspective a little bit, where it's just like, oh, wow, yeah, we kind of laugh at it now, but it is a thing where it's like, oh, what does this mean today? How is it, does like history repeat itself? And in what way do we kind of see this thing emerge?
Well, with you
but yeah.
Sorry, but I was thinking with you talking about how, you're going to go to the bursar's office and you're going to pay for college tuition with those football sets, and people at card shows, being sort of unkempt and smelling terrible. I was thinking, is this the national last year?
Dave, did you have a card when you were growing up that was supposed to pay your college tuition?
Yeah, it was my 1980 Rickey Henderson Topps rookie card.
Oh man, yeah,
that was the one. Also, Kirby Puckett was going to fund quite a few things as well, and shockingly, he didn't.
Yeah,
but, that's okay. That's okay.
I remember like one of the most vivid memories of that time was we had bought a box of 1989 Pro Set football. It's like the first year of Pro Set football.
Great set.
And I was a Pro Set guy. I got the Pro Set Gazette. I got all the, I was diehard Pro Set. And yeah. We were opening, and at the time the big chase card was the William Perry, because they had to stop production of it because the fridge didn't give permission for Pro Set to produce a Fridge Perry card. And I remember my parents, we went to Toys R Us and we got 2 boxes of Pro Set. And my mom, who always kind of stood on the sidelines of my dad and I collecting, she did decide to do a little car rip. She just kind of was intrigued. And the first pack she got the Fridge Perry. And my parents were, they were more into it than I was. They lost their minds. And that was going to buy us a new Buick. No doubt it was going to buy us.
How were they aware of it? Did you get Beckett football? Was that even?
Yep, it was Beckett football. And then my father, like, there was a lot of like that was like a thing back in the day where there was like a lot of guys that my dad worked with who collected themselves, and they would set up at flea markets, or they would set up at the local card show in the Ramada Inn or over by the airport or something. And there would be like word that spread about these cards, like the Fridge Perry or the Billy Ripken F-Face card, or what they say in Beckett, Rick Face, the Rick Face card, or the reverse image Dale Murphy. Like there's all these, like, it almost became this thing of lore. And then when like it ended up in the Beckett and you saw the price next to it, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get this card. This is the thing that I must get, and I must rip cases of 1990 whatever in order to get my hands on it.
So I'm thinking you jumping back into the hobby, like you missed the PSA 10 base card boom, so you're a little bit after that, right? So what's it like? I mean, you've got all these memories when you were a kid, the Fridge Perry and all this stuff with your parents and your dad and Pro Set, and you're like, what was your, because so often the story is, well, I got back in during COVID, right? And that's when that was happening. You were a little bit after that. So what were some of your first impressions when you got back into the hobby of what you were seeing?
I just got lost, because there requires this. There's just so many. It's weird because there is like, you have a monopoly situation, right? But you have so many brands under those umbrellas, and you kind of get a rough under, like you have this sort of, like, you very quickly understand, like, Prism's like on the top, and then you see these things like patch cards, you see these things like auto cards or RPAs, and you just, like, these things seem so, like, you just get bombarded with lots of different sets. And I would watch, kind of, rip videos like Pac-Man and people like that to see just what the products looked like and how they talked about it. And I had a little bit of time where I just was like, and I just try to make sets, which is just such an antiquated idea. I would go and check out, prospecting and seeing Bowman and it was just a very sort of very low stakes, wandering. And I ended up just going really heavily into 1990s because those were and I think it's not anything that's novel, where it's like, these are the players that I really enjoyed. These are the cards that, I had kind of veered away from collecting at this time, but like aesthetically, in terms of like just the novelty of the designs and whatnot, it's something that I really gravitated to. And a lot of the players that and part of me, when I was collecting starting out, a player that I liked, there was just like a weird sort of stakes involved in it. Like, people talk about, oh, it's exciting to collect players that you can watch. I find it to be incredibly anxiety inducing, where I'm almost hexing them, where it's like, okay, I got this Prism Silver Paulo Banchero. Like, he is not going to deliver up to expectations because I have this card and this card's worth this. Like, you have this fear of it. And I just decided, like, with the 90s, it's just like, these are players that I like. These are players that I kind of have stories of my attachment to them, whether it's, players that I enjoyed that reminded me of, a relative, or remind me of a friend, or remind me of a moment, or remind me of a relationship that I have. A lot of the sets that players that I PC kind of have relationships with my dad, when, in the sense that it's like, I started collecting, sitting on the couch, ripping wax packs with my dad. And, I collect, David Robinson, because my dad used to, he was at the same naval base that that David Robinson was on his deployment at, prior to coming in playing for the Spurs. And my father would interact with David Robinson, who is not hard to miss walking around the base. Or Vladimir Guerrero, where, I used to go to spring training games and see Vladimir play, and sitting there with my dad and watching Vlad Guerrero get into a bench clearing brawl with Brad Penny, or it was so there's all these players that I kind of, that's who populates it, like players that I have this sort of attachment with people that I know, or things that I really liked when I was a kid. And it really kind of gives me a sense of kind of, it's like the song of, like, the Walt Whitman, where it's like, we celebrate ourselves, we sing ourselves. Like, we kind of, in a way, sing ourselves through our collection, however we choose to, whatever song we choose to sing. And I and then my son is 5, and he's really getting into certain players. Like, he really loves Amon-Ra St. Brown for some reason, so gets get a few of those cards. He really likes Mo Salah. Like, he can never stop talking. He just wears nothing but Liverpool. He wants to wear his Liverpool like kit everywhere, and he talks about Mo Salah and how Mo Salah is the best soccer player, and my son is number 2 and Alisson Becker's number 3, right? Like, he just has this reverence. So I have a Mo Salah card, and I showed it to my son, and he lost his mind. And so it's like, you kind of play out your relationships with people through the cards you collect. And that's kind of what I really got into, instead of like ripping wax or anything like that. I think that's what I really tended to gravitate towards.
Now you're a couple of years into it. Have you even had a chance to evolve at all? Like, if you look back to where you were a couple of years ago, how does that compare with where you are now?
Oh, it's completely changed. I mean, from buying retail parallels of Panini cards, or buying base or refractor Bowman prospect first chrome autograph cards, to going into doing 90s, and then like getting into some of the more fun modern cards, where they're cards that, yes, are modern, but kind of have the elements of design that harken back to the 90s, the ones that are paper cards that are hollow foil that have a little bit of gloss on them, like Galactics are one that I really quite like, or I'm trying to think. Heritage is one that I haven't gotten heavily into Heritage, but it's one of those things that checks all those boxes, because it's like, it's paper, it's shiny, it looks like 1973 Topps or whatever year of Topps that I'd liked when I was a kid. Like it's fun how you kind of put all these things together and create your collection, and in a way like you do with Cardinals players, and Rick Ankiel or So Taguchi or Stan Musial, or all these players that are really kind of reflect something of yourself. That's kind of what I like to do with it, where you could look at I try to build a collection that's almost like a biography of myself, and trying to find the ways to do it. And there's all sorts of different ways to do it. And then you talk to other collectors, and you learn so much. It's really a process that's evolving, whether it's, sitting on, reading trading card database while sitting on the toilet or something. Like, you're always like learning about things, and it's fun. I mean, it scratches an itch that allows it to be something that you can make it what you want to be. And I think that's something that's really cool about any form of collecting, but baseball cards or football cards, basketball cards, folks that collect, entertainment or culture cards, I guess you could do so many different things. And that's the thing that has really attracted me to it.
I sometimes feel like Heritage is a cheat code. It's me. Right? It's like, let's look who's got the spending power right now. Okay, it's people who would have liked these cards years ago, but let's make them shinier. We're gonna prey upon their nostalgia, but also, gonna put the serial numbers on to make them new as well. And I say that as somebody who I really do love Heritage. I think it's a fantastic set. So I'm saying that sort of half kidding and sort of half not kidding. It really is, in many ways, the perfect idea for a card SKU that comes out these days, because it is pastiche at its most perfect.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you get to honor the past, but you also get to hunt, the current players.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree. It's something that I think that pastiche is kind of something that is really attractive. And yeah, I mean, even if it is like current products that adopt some of the signatures or some of the tactics that you would see in, like, there's the platinum mirrors and they look like a PMG, right? And you see that sort of similarity and it draws you. I think that Heritage is something that is that in overdrive, where you can kind of, and it's fun to just look at the cards side by side, so look at a 2022 next to a 1973 Topps card, and it looks the same. It's like the same frame, but you just see the passage of time in certain ways with the photography and the players and the technologies that get kind of worked into it. And it is also fun because I remember my one of my colleagues, her son collects baseball cards. He's like a budding baseball card freak, and there's nothing more fun. Same thing with my son. Like, any card to them is valuable, right? There's that magic, that aura around it, where you take this card that this base card, and you put it in your Ultra Pro sleeve, and you put it in your binder, and you look at it, and because they seem like gold, because they're not jaded. And he had when I was over there visiting them, they'd actually gotten the most recent version of Topps Heritage. Like the Amazon delivery driver had dropped off a blaster box of the new Heritage, and it's the one that's based on 1975. And he was opening it up and looking at them and trying to find his players. And I was there, and I was like, those are based on 1975 Topps. And I did the thing, like, which I don't know if he was interested in this at all. It's like the thing where the adults, it's kind of like I call it uncle brain or dad brain, where it's just like, hey, check out this cool thing that I think is really neat, and then the kids are like, go away, just noise, you're static right now. but I showed him like, the George Brett, the Robert Yount, the Bob Gibson, like all those cards that are just so iconic. And when you put them side by side, it's really fun. It's just this thing where you could see the passage of time, and you see that in a way collecting is different in some ways, but it's also in some ways can be a lot of the same.
What has changed what's changed in my mind? The thing that has changed the most from when I was a kid and I got back into it, like when I went to my first card show, when I got back into the hobby, I didn't know what to expect. And I walked into this room, it was about 80 tables. And the first thing I realized is this is exactly the same. Like nothing has changed. It looks like the showcases are the same. It looks like some of the dealers might even be the exact same people. The cards in the cases are newer. But the things that stand out to me anyway, that I think that are different now are the technologies, which you already kind of mentioned. The technology is different and the marketing is more sophisticated, as it should be, because now it's 30 years later. Otherwise, it seems eerily similar to what we saw when we were kids. I don't know. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's the same guy that's sitting on his portable stool looking through the value boxes. But I mean, there were, because I remember the first show I went to coming back, and one thing that I noticed was there was a lot more. Everything was like kind of the same, and then the guy with the front facing camera came in. The guy with the camera and people videotaping, like a videographer going in, and that was one of the things that really jarred me. It jarred me a little bit, because I'm like, this isn't a community center. Like there's a quilting class 2 doors down. This isn't like some sort of big production. But I think that was one thing that I found to be kind of, I just look for characters wherever I go. Academically, I'm an ethnographer. So I just kind of get like, which is just kind of code for, I like people watching and then kind of constructing things out of people watching. And you see these characters emerge, and then a new character has entered, and it is front facing camera guy, and that jarred me a little bit. And then I remember at shows, there was a degree of, and you could see this most prominently with the kids walking around with their Zion cases, where always at card shows, you had a little bit of, the kids kind of going up and trying to trade things. And they had, a stack of cards that they had in their, their top loaders or their card savers or their binders, or even in their screw down holders, like the giant paperweight, like something that just looks like, I don't know, a piece of tile that you just plop down on the case. But I think it's a lot more hyper in a lot of ways. Like the pace has really gone up, where kids kind of came up there, or adults that are collecting, and they come in and they have just cards that are so incredibly valuable, right? More valuable than I remembered when I was a kid. But I think one of the things that's a little bit different now is that because of rarity, the serial numbering and whatnot, back in the day, it was a thing where if somebody wanted to prospect, the idea was that, okay, you get a lot of 100 or 200 or 500 cards from a dealer or provider from the back of like Baseball Card Digest or Tough Stuff or something. You had those ads back there. It's like, oh yeah, you could buy 500 Jerome Walton cards. And I think that one of the things is that now it's like in an individual card, whereas in the past it was like, oh, you had like bricks of these cards, and people still lost out on prospects. I mean, there were so many people that I remember when I was a kid were like really wanted to get as many Greg Jeffries cards as possible, or Andre Ware, or Dave Klingler, or Ben McDonald. And they would just get, Hartley Dykes, just all these, Brian Taylor, and they would just get like massive, like just hundreds of them. And the idea was like, okay, all these hundreds together would be like $800, $1,000. And now it's like that giant box has been compacted into one individual card. And the way in which, the principle is similar. It's just like scale versus, something in an individual packet. And yeah, but I just was like blown away where there's this kind of, it's a lot more frenetic. And there is the thing between front facing GoPro camera guy and people coming in with the Zion cases, where it was just like something that it was a little bit jarring. I mean, it was like something that was it's almost like the Rip Van Winkle or something. I imagine waking up and saying, "Oh my gosh, like we're not a British colony anymore. What is this?" Like it's something that really kind of threw me off. But I mean, like fundamentally, like things like speculation and prospecting and things of that nature, it's all the same. Or players that have not appeared in any meaningful way in the league, and their values are like sky high, and then they play their first season and they do okay for being a professional player, which is like a really hard thing to do, but their values just absolutely take a dump. It's yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways it's very similar. I think the other thing that really throws me up, that was jarring too, is like going on the internet, going on eBay and seeing, like, I remember, and I don't know if this was similar to you, Dave, when you were a kid, like there was just an aura that surrounded particular cards, like a Mickey Mantle card. You never, like, unless it was like a good shop that you lived by, you never saw one. Like, and you just kind of construct in your mind what these things are. Like, it's just like there's a mystique. And I think now, because there's such easy access, and you can look on Instagram and you can see cards that are very rare, there's like a demystification process, right, where it's like, oh, these things do exist. And there's also a universe of cards that like are so cool that you didn't know about because you were just outside of the zeitgeist, or you didn't know somebody that had a green PMG, or you didn't know someone who had an essential credentials, or you didn't know someone who had a mirror gold. And you get kind of exposed to it. And in a way, it, like the things that were mystical, like a Mickey Mantle, 1960 Mickey Mantle or 1965 Mickey Mantle, that was like the card that I thought was like the coolest. Or Willie Mays. It's like, oh yeah, these are plenty. And there's that kind of mystique gets taken away from it. But then there's this added element where you see these cards now that are just like, exceedingly rare and exceedingly scarce. And in a way, they're visible, so there's a lack of mystique to them. But it, like, because they're accessible, it's like, oh, I can get this possibly. And it does kind of create a different orientation to the card that you have,
I think
or the cards that are available.
I think it's forced a recalibration. And
Mhm.
the card that was the card when I was growing up that was more myth than cardboard was the 1963 Topps Pete Rose rookie.
Oh yeah.
Even the 52 Topps the mantle seemed more attainable than the 63 Rose. There was just something about, and maybe that's because he was just breaking the record. He was active. I saw him play. But I think you really touched on something with the whole scarcity thing. When you look at people's collections, say if you look at a really high-end vintage collection, and they've got the full Mickey Mantle run, they got the 51 Bowman, the 52 Topps, everything up through his retirement. They've got a Wilson Franks, Ted Williams. They have all these incredible cards. When I was younger and I would look at those, I would think that is what I aspire to have. That's what I want. When I see those now, because they are all so accessible, and the only barrier between someone having those and not having those is whether they have the money and whether they are willing to spend the money. That's it. If you have the money, you can find anything now. And that's because of eBay and all the other markets, but specifically because of eBay. So you recalibrate. And then what becomes the social currency? The hard to find cards. The 63 Rose was hard to find 30 years ago. Now I can find it anywhere I want to. What can't you find, right? The low serial numbered cards of the stars of the era that we didn't know that scarce cards were going to be scarce, right? Which is why something like a fuchsia prism out of 5 now doesn't have the same value as something out of 99 from 1998, right? Because at the time it was new, but now we realize, oh, that was special. But now we know what's special, so people just try to hoard the lower serial number cards now, but they don't have the same value as the 90s cards. So to create those types of collections now that get people maybe the reaction that they want, or why would they collect those types of cards, you have to go over what other people can't get.
Dave, 5 is neon green, not fuchsia. Just, you know. But I agree. I mean, it's something where it doesn't, in a way, like, it's weird how jaded you get, because really it kind of doesn't diminish how awesome it is visually. I one of the early things that I did when I was collecting went back into collecting, that is, was I wanted to complete the run of Bob Gibson cards. I think Bob Gibson is one of my favorite old-time baseball players, just as a player, a figure, like, you know, just kind of as a man. I just think that Bob Gibson is just a very endlessly fascinating individual. And I put together the whole run of his cards from 1959, the Pepto-Bismol rookie, all the way to the 1975. And looking at them, I was just like, my goodness, this is so sick, because you could just see him progress through time. You could see the designs, and you could be like, oh, okay, and that 1970 gray design, that looks horrible. But that 1965 one, that's what a baseball card looks like. If you were to draw a generic old baseball card from that era, the pennant, all that stuff, that's what it is. And it, like, if you were to see those the runs of players, or if you were to see just like a collection of just even cards from that, I remember how amped I was to get like a random 1952. I was like a Vern Law, and I got this thing. I was like, it's a 1952 Topps. Oh my goodness, this thing is like, this is holy. This was in the same facility that all these, the Jackie Robinson. Oh, this is a relic. Yeah, and I mean, it just doesn't diminish how the cards like just kind of the impact it has, right? Like, if you look, like, we know how many PSA 10, 9, 8 1985 Michael Jordan Fleer cards there are, but if you're to see one right in front of you, it does have that effect of just being very, just it's alluring, and it just takes you, it hits a certain gland in your mind that it's resonant.
Man, I went to a card show about 30 minutes north of here about 6 weeks ago. Someone had a Jordan 86 Fleer in their case, and I never really wanted that card, but I walked by it and I saw it in person, and this is exactly what you're talking about, where I thought, oh, now it's different, right? That's like going through the cards I brought. Like, maybe I can figure something out to trade for something like this. It's just different in person.
There's nothing about it just based on my tastes that I would want that card. I'm not a Michael Jordan fan. Like, I understand, like, okay, the pop reports, and this is a hack, hacks collect this card. That's not real collecting. That's the easy route. But there is a sort of thing where if you see like because I live in Canada, and you see the O-Pee-Chee Wayne Gretzky rookie card, and I'm not a hockey fan. I don't necessarily have an affinity for Wayne Gretzky, but I saw that card in my LCS. I was like, oh damn, this is I can vibe on this. Yeah. I don't want it, but I can feel it. I can
put your arm around it. Hey,
yeah. I like the beat. There's some that like I know, but like the Gibson, or the Henderson, I bought one of those Hendersons because it's just like this card, like I look at it and it makes me just so happy. It hits like a certain part of me. But yeah, I think that with collecting, it's like we get jaded, and there is a reality where a lot of these cards are not as scarce as we think they are. It's not as scarce as, and back when we started, they were scarce. You never saw these cards. You didn't know they existed. You thought that these things were just like just these incredibly, like, I remember when I was a kid, there was an episode of MacGyver where MacGyver had to bust a baseball card counterfeiting ring with the help of Reggie Jackson. And it's like Reggie Jackson helped, but like his whole appearance was like he came out of a limo and then he said some stuff and then he got back in the limo and you know, Reggie Jackson was there. The way in which they talked about those cards, it was just like, oh my God, these things are gold. Like they were basically like counterfeiting just, you know, impressionist paintings or something like that. And in reality, like, yes, like we can go on eBay right now and buy, each of us buy 10 Bob Gibson PSA graded cards, yeah, rookie cards. But it's just like, that's true. But there is something about it where you look at it and you're just like, dang, this is great.
I think I know what that is, because I bristle when I hear ultra modern collectors who feel the need to secure their own spot while saying something negative about vintage. I bristle at the whole, you know, vintage isn't scarce thing, because I think what vintage, I made the point before about if you have the money, you can buy one of these vintage cards now that when we were kids, we couldn't. But I think what I find interesting about vintage collectors is it says a lot about their taste. Mm-hmm. It says a lot about their own history, what they find valuable. And I don't mean financially valuable, but what they appreciate historically. And what I love now about vintage collectors is you can learn about the collector, I think, by seeing their collection as much as you can learn about the cards that they have. You know, I'll go back to the 63 Rose. Yeah, there's lots of them, sure. And it's not hard to find. But the one that you choose to get and what you choose to surround it with and what you say about it, I think to me, those are the collectors that I'm really drawn to. It's almost the whole more than the single card at this point. And when I see what, you know, it's like this, you know, like this Leviathan, right? You start putting all these different pieces together, or Voltron, and you start putting the different pieces together and you see like, whoa, look what that person built, right? Like it's okay. So they've got a 57 Hank Aaron where he's batting lefty instead of righty. That's great. But look what else they put with it. And what they're putting together then is telling some sort of a larger story about themselves, but also about what they see as being important about sports history or card collecting or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it is a thing, and that Rose is such a hideous looking card. My goodness, that thing is so brutal. It's
beautiful and hideous.
It's like avocado green carpet and wood paneling put together. Yeah, it's like it's oh man, that card is a mess. But I don't think that this is necessarily exclusive to vintage collectors as well. I mean, I know a lot of folks that collect like 90s or collect ultra modern even, and they get like, you know, yes, there are people that are like very, you know, economically driven, right? They you know, kind of focused on economics as opposed to kind of art for art's sake. And nobody's truly like, you know, there isn't like clear ideal types in either direction. But we'll just say, like, as a shorthand, you know, collectors, where there is a thing where people will gravitate towards particular parallels, you know, the players that they choose, you know, the kind of, and the way in which they put together, and maybe it's based upon a sense of like perceived value growing if they're more economically oriented, or if they have an economic disinterest, it's like more based upon like, oh, I want to like collect Dyson Daniels, and I want to collect you know, Alec Baum, and I want to collect I don't know, Zay Flowers or something, like some sort of like combination of players. But it's like a thing where it's like there's something like, yeah, like with collections, like there is a thing where how you kind of, you have your centerpiece things, those things that are like the you know, the sports term, the glue guy, or your superstar or something like that. But you have those things that surround it. And that's kind of the thing that even if, and I think vintage collectors in some way, unless they're the ones that are like into sets, like the really hardcore ones, but I think that like, it's a little bit more apparent. But like, I think generally across collectors, I think the thing that's like really interesting is what you seek to, you know, you kind of like break these sort of discrete categories of players or sets, individual sets or individual parallels, and combine things with is really, really neat. Like there's something to be said for looking through the the showcase. This is going to sound like a card ladder commercial. You can edit in that like rap song that they put at the end of the crossover, the one that's like super aggro. But it's kind of cool to go through like the showcase of card ladder and see people's like collections and what they put together, or on Instagram or whatever, Flickr, people have Flickr accounts, like just seeing like okay, how did you put all of these discrete things together, and what you chose and what you kind of go in the direction of, and how like sometimes like uniform it is, but in other times it's like super random, but there's a logic behind it. There's like a method to the madness where it's like either, hey, I like all of these players, or I was with friends and I bought this card, and there's this sort of relationship that's formed with the card based upon the context in which you acquired it. I mean, there's cards that I have that I just like, I have my PC guys, right? My players that I collect, but then there's other things where it's just like there's cards that are in there that it's just like, well, there's no thematic connection here. I just thought it was really cool, and I was in this situation. Like I think there's something about that that's just really fascinating, like how you choose to collect and what you choose to collect, and what that kind of like those bonds that you have with it, and by extension the connections and relationships you have with people. And yeah, it's just really, I mean, it gets into the philosophy of collecting, but yeah, I think that it's something that I just find endlessly fascinating going back into it, because like you can see an endless amount, like you would go to like this was the thing, like when you were a kid, did you go to like, you met a kid at school that liked cards, and you're like, and there's a lot more of them then than there is now. I guess Pokemon is probably what people are into now, but you would be like, oh man, you got cards. I'm gonna bring my binder. We're gonna go to your house and we're gonna compare binders, right? And then you're gonna trade and you do your things, and you're like, oh, you go crazy. Like we have now an endless like collection of binders that we can see. Everybody's sharing their binders, and there isn't as many I mean, yeah, there are financial constraints that exist with scarce cards. There's just access, or people just locking them down, or them coming up for sale at certain times. But it's like you have this endless amount, like people can construct their binders more freely, and it's very like, that's something that is remarkable about the hobby. That's like it's always like the same we have the binders, as collectors, we have our binders, but we like the binders because of just access and disposable income or whatever it happens to be. And the more choice that we have and the more access we have to it, it's just really, it's something that's a little bit exhilarating about collecting now.
It is. And who says that everything has to connect, right? I love what you said about sometimes, why'd you get this card? Because I liked it.
Yeah.
You collect it? I just liked it. And I think that's okay.
Oh, it's dope. This card is awesome. Look at this thing. It's like there's no rhyme or reason to it. Just look at it. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are things that like, we're kind of looking at it from a lens of collecting. Obviously, like as a economic system, as a market for cultural goods, I mean, it's a lot more complex, and people do have different dispositions when it comes to the hobby. You have the people that, try and, I mean, there's a lot of people like, I mean, I'm not denigrating, but it's like, there's a lot of people that I come across that are, doing the thing of flipping and stuff like that and being a little bit more aggressive about it. There is, and we set kind of value judgments and whatnot. But I mean, I think that the thing that's really fun is coming into contact with people that just collect weird things, or people that just, I mean, just the idea of like what you build your collection around, and not, it could be more, art for art's sake purposes, or it might be more based around like a economic prerogative where, I deal the cards, I sell them, I'm trying to acquire more, I'm trying to scale myself up. But I think that, just on a certain level, it's just interesting to see how individuals, get reflected in their collections, and how just like, orderly they can be, or just how absolutely frenetic and all over the place they can be.
Right. But really, as long as you are enjoying yourself, just keep doing whatever you want to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and people will talk about how things, back in the day, and I see this a lot when people like bemoan grading, or they bemoan all the parallels, or they bemoan. I mean, it's just like, there are things that are problematic, right? There are things that lead I'm going to say the hobby, registered trademark, that lead sports card collecting in the sports card industry into directions that are not sustainable, not beneficial collectively. But when I hear people say, oh, it's not the same, or it's not as good as, it's almost like when you go on YouTube and you pull up an old song, the people there, the top comments are like, oh, this is when it was real music. That's real music. And it's a thing where I think we kind of look at the hobby through these sort of glasses of, oh, there's this idealized past. And there's a lot of things that, if you look at, if you read old Beckett magazines, or you watch, there's like a amazing cable access documentary called Cardboard Dreams, where if you watch that and you just, change the clothes, change the production values, it's kind of, a lot of themes are very much evergreen, and so it's like a thing where we constantly repeat these things, like these cycles continue.
Yeah, I'm pausing because my mind is going in about 8 different directions at this point. This idea of things were better then. I think things are the same as when. There's certainly some differences, but the sort of the overarching themes, the foundation is still there. It's just, I don't know. I disagree. I think I would disagree if somebody said, tried to romanticize collecting in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, because I remember having some wonderful times collecting cards with friends or on my own, and just spending time on the floor of my room sorting and making my sets. And I remember going into shops where there were people who were incredibly helpful and just wanted to encourage me and teach me. And I remember going into shops where they were, jerks. Who I came in and I was ready to buy an 85 Topps or 85 Donruss Kirby Puckett rookie. The guy had a stack and he goes, "You want this one?" And I was really great, and it was centered, but it was like beat to hell on the corners. But I took it, right, because he just wanted to get rid of the crappiest one. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's any different from now. Yeah. There are people wonderful people who are trying to educate people and help kids and bring kids into the hobby and have it be safe and just have a nice environment for people of all ages and all demographics. Then there are those who are not. And I see very little that's different.
I think that it is a thing where, look, like counterfeiting, trimming, like all these things that are bugbears now, they existed in the past. And or things about speculation or prospecting, like, it happened. And when people say, oh, this is junk wax 2.0, I mean, it's like, yeah, I think that there are things that on a certain level, if you're trying to build value, or if you're an adult and you're trying to construct a collection that you're not just burning money, like, you have to be judicious, much like you had to be in the past, right? It's different terms and different scales and different technologies and different like environmental aspects of it. But the process and the mechanisms still kind of turn very similarly. But like, I see like how my son or his friends or look at base cards, or they look at the cards that they get out of packs, or see them like look like kind of seeing a card that in dollar terms is like, well, $1 card, $2 card, or when the envelope from ComC comes in with the things that he picked out. It's a thing where they all see these things and they're just geeking out, man. They're just going crazy. And I see this and I'm just kind of in my mind, look at it and I'm just like, I want to get some of that like mindset. Like, what do you all like? Give me that. And can I smoke this thing or shoot it into my veins? Like, that's the thing that's really fun. And I think that we do it like, I think it's possible to do that sort of thing. It's not like, I know people that just geek out about building sets and stuff like that, but I think that it's just like, I think approaching that, it's like, that still exists, right? Even though there are kids that are running around with Zion cases and kids online that are like, I'm 12 years old, but I got a certified pre-owned Lexus worth of cards in my Zion case. Like, there is a thing where that happens, right? That exists now. It's more prominent now and more visible. But I think one of the things that's there is that the joy is still there. And that's something that's evergreen too. So, I mean, a lot of it is just like, we have these imagined pasts and we kind of have these imagined futures. And, maybe it's not I think it's just kind of capturing the things of like, not romanticizing the past and not demonizing the future, but just trying to figure out the ways in which they're, you can kind of find the similarities and grow from them, but also figure out ways to kind of, capture the things that are just really cool to you. And if it's selling cards, that's awesome, man. You do you. If it's collecting, you do you. If it's, you want to be a curator, or you want to get one of ones exclusively because you want to replicate that scarcity, that art experience, go for it. If it's, I think that there's a lot of different lanes. And I mean, some are less sustainable than others. Some are, exploitative. There are things that are there, but I think that there is a space for everything that's there. So it's not necessarily so different.
No, you talk about this imagined past and imagined future, and we are going to wind down here in just a little bit, because otherwise I could take up your entire day. But what about an imagined present? Because we could only see what's in front of us, or perceive what's in front of us. And I think that's where a lot of this is going to be better down the road if something happens, or it was better in the past when something was. Because when we're in the middle of what is happening to us, it feels, sometimes things feel more dire, more pronounced, more exciting. So I don't want to just go negative on this at all, but I think our perceptions of the moment are not always accurate.
And I think the one thing is to just kind of respond to that really quickly, is that I think one of the things that changes it is when you get friends, like tangible, like, because the thing is that our adaptation patterns and consumption patterns, kind of like one way in which we orient it is towards consuming things that other people consume, because it allows us to build our relationships with other people, right? So it's like, I might not like football, but I'll watch football because I could talk about football at the office and have a better relationship with people, and have better things to talk about. I think with collecting, building those friendships and not necessarily looking out at this sort of like Instagram world or this influencer world that's been kind of thought out and edited or idealized or filtered in certain ways, but just finding people that are like buddies, finding, folks that you could talk to them and you could talk about what you pick up and share information. And, they could be online if you don't know anybody, or people that just, that you go to shows with. I think that allows you to immerse you in a present that's a little bit more, realistic, I guess, has a little bit more firmness to it.
This has been great, Pat, at Insta account Haver on Instagram. This is wonderful. Been great talking to you. I hope this is not our last conversation.
I hope not either.
Yeah. I just totally froze. Sorry about that. I was like,
keep it in.
I was about to ask
warts and all.
After saying what your name was and where to find your Instagram, I was about to. The next thing in my brain was, where can people find you? Like, you just said that. It was like, no.
You can find me at www.sportscardsinvestor.com.
Very good. Jeff Wilson. No. Pat, Insta account Haver. Nice talking with you. Take care.
Good talking to you, buddy.